Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with week 104 in this time of the Great War. I'm mind blank. This time Australia's darkest hour, the Battle of Fromelles. So you're telling me Gallipoli wasn't the worst thing for the Australians? Damn, Australia, that fucking sucks, my dude. Before we dive in, though, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love it if you joined the Discord and followed me over at Twitch. Okay. Nothing really to say here. I've never heard of this battle. I don't think I have. Maybe I have. I'm forgetting it at the moment. But let's just go ahead and dive right in.
You have plans.
Right.
Specific plans for a limited, specific battle.
Okay.
And you're prepared for it. But the big day draws near, and as it does, you expand those plans, and expand them again until they are now the realm of fantasy. Careful.
I only live in the realm of fantasy. It's an unhealthy obsession.
Because once you start planning fantasies in wartime, you can only be disappointed.
I don't know. Tolkien was kind of, creating fantasies in wartime. That's where he's, he was doing poetry and stuff right there on the front line stuff. Like.
I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to the Great War.
Woo.
The Battle of the Somme continued last week, though it was now a large and dizzying collection of small, uncoordinated assaults.
Sounds about right.
The Germans tried again and failed again at Verdun, and the Russians took a bunch more ground before finally being halted at the Stockhard River. Here's what came next on the world's battlefields. Well, on a battlefield north of the Somme, there was a diversion this week.
Ooh.
On the 19th at Fromelles with Australian troops. Many of these men had fought last summer, autumn, and winter at Gallipoli.
Oh. They really couldn't catch a fucking break. Oh no.
But this was their first offensive action on the Western Front. The idea was to prevent the Germans from sending reinforcements down to the Somme. Thing is, General Harold Elliott, known as Pompey, was alarmed by the strength of the German defenses at Fromelles and thought the diversion would be more of a slaughter. He reported this to British Commander-in-Chief Sir Douglas Haig, along with intelligence information that the Germans were not, in fact, being transferred to the Somme. So there was no need for the attack. But the Corps commander, General Sir Richard Haking, wanted the attack to happen anyhow, confident of success. The objective was Aubert Ridge, 2 miles south of Fromelles. The attack would proceed across a low no-man's land towards a salient called the Sugarloaf, which was strongly fortified by the Germans. Now, the Germans in Fromelles had, high up in the church tower, a peephole designed for observation, and all through the 18th, they could watch the preparations for the attack, which began late in the day on the 19th after a day-long artillery barrage.
It's gonna be a bloodbath. And it's not going to be on the German side.
But when the men went over the top, it turned out the artillery had not taken out the German machine guns. The casualties were huge, and the Sugarloaf salient remained in German hands, though some British and Australian soldiers did at least manage to reach the Sugarloaf's outer wire. The scene was described like this. We found the no man's land simply full of our dead. In the narrow sector west of the Sugarloaf salient, the skulls and bones and torn uniforms were lying about everywhere. I found a bit of Australian kit lying 50 yards from the corner of the salient, and the bones of an Australian officer and several men within 100 yards of it. Now that was just a brief interlude away from the huge carnage of the Somme, but the Australians lost 1,708 men killed and almost 4,000 wounded. The British lost another 400 or so killed. German dead and wounded in total were under 1,500. The attack was a total failure. And at the Somme itself, the attacks also continued. As the week began, so did the fight for Delville Wood. That battle began with the South African Brigade being ordered to take the wood. Hugh Bousted had this to say. We moved forward through an orchard in single file, led by the platoon officer. Smith, the second lieutenant, got through, but the next 7 following him were shot dead in a circle of a few yards, picked off by clean shooting without a murmur.
Damn.
This whole offensive the Battle of Bazentin Ridge had begun the 14th. It was to be an assault by 4 divisions on the enemy's second line between Longueval and Bazentin-le-Petit Wood. General Sir Henry Rawlinson's idea. Commander Haig thought Rawlinson would do preliminary stuff to get the front to within a few hundred yards of the Germans, but Rawlinson thought this impractical. But this meant the British had a no-man's land of nearly a mile of no cover to cross, which was a scenario for disaster. But Rawlinson planned to make a night maneuver, where the divisions would form in no-man's land undetected in the dark and close in and then attack with the dawn. As long as it remained undetected, it would solve the no-man's land problem. But other night attacks, like back on the 3rd, had been detected and had failed. The bombardment would be different from the one that kicked off the battle back on the 1st. 5 times heavier and only against the German front trench system, 1,000 guns on a 6-kilometer front. As the day approached, though, the objectives were extended more and more. So from an initially modest plan to take that one line, there were now plans to push as far as Fliers.
In a war where you are barely taking, like, feet of land, you want to go from here, your blue line, to Bazentin and Longueval, but you want to push have people never been able to read a room in history? Is that just a thing that's like, how can you understand in the context of this entire war think that a possibility? You've been fighting this war for 2 years now, and you think that's a possibility? You're stupid!
And Lessard, several miles
You're really stupid!
distant and even beyond. Rawlinson was now even planning on taking the 3rd German trench line between Lessard and Morville. So the objective was no longer an advance of a few hundred meters on a 6-kilometer front, but an advance of around 6 kilometers on a 10-kilometer front. Haig was actually against the scope of this plan. It seems he was no longer as optimistic about a German collapse as he had been last week. Robin Pryor and Trevor Wilson in the...
What exactly gives you the... What exactly... I don't understand how, in any sense of what you've been seeing, what information you may have that would give you any sort of inclination that the Germans are nearing a break. Huh?
Somme right. Commentators have hailed the plan for July 14th as being a great advance in tactical sophistication. It must be emphasized that a night attack in itself did not guarantee success.
A great advance in tactical sophistication. Wow. Guys, let's attack at night. I never would have thought of that. You're a genius. You're a genius, lad.
Success. Only one facet of Rawlinson's July 14th plan shows any improvement on the first day, namely the execution of a bombardment on the front German system of a far greater intensity than anything delivered on July 1st. Here, Rawlinson may have revealed a measure of insight. 2 things tell firmly against any such notion. First was the delusion that the bombardment would not only overwhelm the German front defenses, but lead to a decisive collapse in German morale. The second is that Rawlinson never again employed a bombardment of the intensity of July 14th. That last would turn out to be not entirely true, actually. But the men got in place. The attack went off at 3:25 a.m., and soon almost the entire German front trench system had fallen. This was a major achievement, but big obstacles to further progress lay ahead. Behind the German lines lay the 3 fortified towns and woods of Bazentin-la-Petite, Bazentin-le-Grand, and Longueval, and Delville Wood. And if these fell, high wood on the ridge was a further barrier. And you know what? German morale did not collapse. And Rawlinson's large objectives were really just fantasy. He had indeed proved that the weight of his artillery could secure the enemy's front position, but nothing beyond that. As Peter Hart says, The British had indeed succeeded in breaking into the German system, but not in breaking through it. Rawlinson then had the idea of a combined attack with the French on the 18th, which was a date French General Ferdinand Foch was going to send his men to attack as it was, but weather postponed that. Then, Rawlinson said his men wouldn't be ready until the 22nd, so the French went ahead and attacked alone, and unsuccessfully, on the 20th. So the week ended there with new plans afoot for a combined attack. And further south at Verdun, the attacks seemed to be over for the time being. But according to Alistair Horn, between February 21st and July 15th, the French had lost over 275,000 men and 6,563 officers at Verdun.
Damn.
Over 120,000 casualties in just the past 2 months. The Germans had lost nearly 250,000 men, about twice the amount at Verdun.
So the French are losing more than the Germans. Although, no, the French can't afford... depends what forces the French have brought to the battle here. If the French are using like colonial forces like the British tend to do, then these losses aren't as bad. But if these are like native French losses, then that is rough on the French. Because I think the French have at this point in time have a similar population size to the Germany. And then, of course, World War II, Germany outnumbers the French by like 20 million or something like that. Because the French just did not recoup. But, yeah, the loss, like the German, neither the French or the Germans can really afford to lose that many men. Although the French, I think, are in a more stable boat than losing that many men because they have the British on the front lines with them, so it's not as rough. But yeah, that's pretty good for the Germans. Assaulting a fortified fucking, like, Verdun's a fucking fortress. It's like I mean, and to get pretty even losses there and still pretty even casualties, that's pretty good.
5,000 men and 6,563 officers at Verdun, and over 120,000 casualties in just the past 2 months. The Germans had lost nearly 250,000 men, about twice the amount German Chief of Staff Erich von Falkenhayn had wanted to allocate for his limited offensive in the first place. And an offensive that was anything but limited was still going on far to the east. Alexei Brusilov's enormous and enormously successful Russian offensive was in its 7th week, with no signs of slowing down, though this week his intelligence had uncovered an Austrian plan to counterstrike the Russian center. So on the 16th, Vladimir Sakharov's 11th Army launched a preemptive strike on the upper Styr River. He drove the Austrians back to the Lipa, taking 13,000 prisoners. Actually, Russia was on the move everywhere this week. In Anatolia, the Russians were driving the Ottomans back southwest of Mush, while in Persia were themselves being driven back north of Kermanshah by Ottoman forces. And that was the week. Russian advances on 2 fronts and a defeat on a 3rd. Verdun quiet, a pointless diversion at Auberge Ridge, and dreams of German collapse at the Somme. My conclusion last week was about Rawlinson, and here he is again, really believing that if they break through one German line of trenches, German morale would collapse, and the cavalry could sweep in and overrun the entire German lines. But had that happened at any point in the war?
No.
Had German morale collapsed at Loos and Champagne, at Festubert, at Verdun? And yet Rawlinson believed it would happen at the Somme.
He's a dumbass.
Pure fantasy. And the results of a general's pure fantasy are easy enough to predict. Everyone dies. You can buy The Somme by Robin Pryor and Trevor Wilson in our Amazon shop to support our show. If you want to find out more about...
And now was Australia's darkest hour, the Battle of Fromelles. The Great War, Week 104. I really don't have anything to add here at the end. Just more generals being complete dumbasses. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.